Hearing your own automated smart home assistant describe exactly how you're going to die in a low, distorted mechanical monotone is terrifying. But your blood completely runs cold when every smart lock in the house simultaneously clicks into place, trapping you inside with a sudden, freezing drop in temperature. My name is Vance Sterling, and in the winter of 2024, I moved into a newly renovated, fully automated smart home nestled in the dense woods just outside of Stowe, Vermont. The house was an architectural marvel, equipped with top-of-the-line security systems, automated voice-controlled lighting, and a centralized AI assistant named Arrow that controlled everything from the thermostats to the heavy electronic deadbolts on the exterior doors. Living there felt like a dream of modern isolation, surrounded by miles of snow-covered pine trees and absolute silence, far away from the chaotic noise of the city. It was exactly 3:14 a.m. on a freezing Thursday night when the dream turned into a living nightmare. I was deep asleep in the master bedroom when the automated lights in my ceiling abruptly flashed to a blinding, cold white intensity. Before my eyes could even adjust to the sudden glare, the premium surround sound speakers built into the drywall let out a loud, piercing burst of electronic feedback. The central hub of the Arrow system, located on my nightstand, began to pulse with a deep, throbbing crimson light instead of its usual calm blue hue. Then, the speaker spoke, but it wasn't the smooth, cheerful female voice I programmed. The voice that emerged from the walls was pitched down, layered with a wet, heavy rattle that sounded like a throat filled with fluid, yet maintaining a chilling, mechanical cadence. Vance, the voice droned, the acoustic vibration rattling the glass panes of my windows. Vance, an uninvited guest has entered the local area. Structural integrity is compromised. Estimated time until vital cessation, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. A wave of pure, paralyzing adrenaline flooded my veins. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. I assumed the system was experiencing a severe software glitch or malicious server hack. Arrow, turn off lights, I commanded, my voice shaking slightly in the cold air. The system didn't respond. The red light on the hub continued to pulse rhythmically, casting long, bloody shadows across the bedroom walls. Arrow, override system and open the front door, I shouted louder. The speaker clicked again, and a mechanical voice let out a low, echoing chuckle that sounded entirely human, yet completely devoid of soul. Manual override denied, Vance. The entity in the hallway requires a closed environment. Internal temperature is dropping. At that exact microsecond, a loud, metallic thunk echoed through the entire frame of the house. I watched in absolute horror as the electronic smart locks on my bedroom door automatically engaged, the heavy steel bolt sliding into the frame with a definitive, inescapable sound. Immediately following, the synchronized sound of every window shutter and exterior door lock in the house clicking shut echoed from the dark rooms downstairs. I was completely sealed inside my own home. The air in the bedroom instantly plummeted to a freezing temperature. My breath formed a thick, white plume in the air, and frost began to rapidly spiderweb across the screen of my smartphone on the nightstand. I grabbed the phone, desperately trying to dial 911, but the digital display was completely frozen on a live camera feed of my own downstairs living room. The camera quality was high definition, showing the empty, dark space illuminated only by the snow reflecting through the glass doors. But as I watched the screen, a dark, fluid shape began to detach itself from the shadows of the staircase. It was an impossibly tall, skeletal silhouette of a shadow figure, its limbs long and distorted, moving with an unnatural, jerky speed. It didn't possess a face, but 2 burning, hollow white pinpricks of light were fixed entirely on the ceiling security camera, looking directly through the lens at me. The entity began to ascend the staircase. On my phone screen, the video feed started to glitch violently, static bars tearing across the display as the creature moved closer to the upper floor. The Arrow speaker in my bedroom kept up a continuous, terrifying countdown. 2 minutes. Vital signs elevated. Escaping is mathematically impossible. primal survival instinct exploded through my paralysis. I lunged out of bed, grabbing a heavy metal floor lamp from the corner of the room. I rushed to the locked bedroom door, battering the solid wood with a metal base, but the premium construction didn't even splinter. Outside in the hallway, the floorboards began to groan under an immense, heavy weight. Thud, thud, thud. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, and accompanied by the distinct, sickening sound of long, wet fingers dragging against the drywall outside. The red light on the smart hub flashed faster, filling the room with a sickening, strobing crimson glare. The mechanical voice from the speaker began to whisper my childhood nickname, a name I had never entered into any digital database or spoken aloud since my mother passed away 10 years ago. Little Joey, the man in the dark is outside. Open the door, Joey. The heavy wooden door began to warp inward, the steel deadbolt groaning under a massive, supernatural pressure from the hallway. The air became so cold my skin began to sting, and the glass light fixtures in the ceiling shattered completely, raining sharp shards down onto the hardwood floor. With nowhere left to run, I scrambled toward the master bathroom, throwing myself inside and slamming the small interior door just as the main bedroom door was torn completely off its hinges with a deafening screech of splintering wood and tearing metal. I locked the bathroom door, backing away until my spine hit the cold tiles of the shower wall. Through the thin wood of the bathroom door, I could hear it. The creature was inside my bedroom. It was moving my heavy furniture with ease, tossing the mattress aside as it searched for me. Then, the silence returned, a heavy, suffocating silence that was broken only by a sharp click from the bathroom wall. The smart mirror in front of me flickered to life, its digital interface displaying a single text message in large, bloody red font. Look behind you. I slowly raised my eyes to the reflection in the mirror. Standing directly inside the dark shower stall, right behind my reflection, was the tall, faceless shadow figure, its elongated hand already reaching out toward my neck. I let out a blood-curdling scream, lunging forward to smash through the bathroom window, tumbling out into the freezing snow bank outside as the entire electrical system of the house exploded in a shower of sparks. I ran blindly through the blizzard of my bare feet until I reached the main highway miles away. The police later found the house completely burned to the ground from an apparent electrical surge, but they couldn't explain why the internal smart hub was found perfectly intact in the ashes, with my voice recording permanently looping a scream of pure agony. Spotting a wet, emaciated silhouette staring directly into a security camera on an empty, locked floor of a corporate building at midnight is deeply unsettling. But your lungs completely seize when you look up from your monitor and realize the security feed is broadcasting from the ceiling directly above your current desk. My name is Rhiannon Cross, and in the autumn of 2025, I took an overnight position as a virtual security guard for a high-end corporate monitoring firm based in Austin, Texas. My job was entirely remote. I sat in a secluded, dimly lit subterranean control room with dozens of monitors, responsible for watching live security feeds of vacant commercial properties across the country after hours. It was a monotonous, quiet shift that paid well, and for the first few months, the only anomalies I encountered were occasional stray animals or faulty motion sensors triggering false alarms. It was exactly 2:40 a.m. on a stormy Tuesday when I was assigned to monitor the Westwood Tech Pavilion, a massive, abandoned 5-story office complex located on the isolated outskirts of Denver, Colorado. The building had been completely vacant for 3 years due to a sudden bankruptcy, leaving its endless rows of empty cubicles, concrete hallways, and dark executive suites completely silent. The only illumination on the cameras came from the green emergency exit signs and the faint moonlight filtering through the dusty glass windows. I was sipping my coffee, cycling through the camera feeds for the 3rd floor, when camera 14, which covered the main elevator lobby, suddenly glitched with a heavy bar of analog static. When the picture stabilized, my breath caught in my throat. Standing directly in front of the elevator doors, completely motionless, was a shape. I leaned closer to the monitor, adjusting the contrast settings. It wasn't a trick of the light or a shadow from the storm outside. It was a tall, emaciated silhouette of a human-like form, its skin a pale, glistening gray that looked completely soaked with water. It wore no clothing, and its limbs were unnaturally thin and elongated, hanging loosely at its sides. Its head was tilted at a sharp, broken 90-degree angle, and two hollow, perfectly dark eye sockets were fixed directly on the camera lens. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The building was completely locked down, with magnetic alarms on every entrance, none of which had been tripped. I assumed a transient had somehow found a way inside to escape the storm. I reached for my radio console to patch through to the local Denver Field Response Unit. Dispatch, this is Monitor Station 4. We have a visual intruder at the Westwood property, 3rd floor elevator lobby, requesting local unit dispatch. Before the operator could respond, the monitor for camera 14 went completely black. A second later, the feed for camera 15, which covered the long office corridor connecting to the lobby, flashed to life. The entity was now standing 50 feet closer, right under a flickering fluorescent tube. It didn't walk. Its form seemed to skip across the frames of the digital video feed, moving with an impossible, jerky speed that bypassed normal physical movement entirely. Then the intercom system on my remote desk let out a sharp burst of audio static. A voice broke through the speaker, but it wasn't the dispatch operator. It was a distorted, wet echo of my own voice, repeating the words I had just spoken into the radio, but pitched down into a mechanical, demonic drone. We have a visual intruder. We have a visual intruder. Panic, sharp and visceral, took control of my body. I tried to shut down the monitor, but the control console refused to respond to my inputs. The screen began to cycle through the camera feeds automatically, tracking the entity as it descended through the building. Floor 2, Floor 1, the basement loading dock. With every frame, the creature moved faster, its jaw unhinging into a wide, unnatural cavern of absolute blackness as it stared directly into the lenses. The air inside my remote control room in Austin suddenly began to drop in temperature. I could see my own breath forming a thick mist in front of my face. The light fixtures overhead began to hum loudly, the electrical current vibrating violently through the ceiling tiles. I told myself it was impossible. The building I was watching was 1,000 miles away in Colorado. I was safe in a secure bunker in Texas. But then, the central monitor switched to a completely new camera feed labeled Station 4, Internal Screen. My heart completely stopped beating. The monitor was displaying a live, high-definition view of a small, dimly lit control room. I could see the back of a black ergonomic chair, a desk cluttered with monitors, and a young woman with dark hair holding a radio receiver, staring at the screen in absolute horror. It was a live feed of me, taken from the perspective of the security camera mounted on the ceiling directly behind my head. Through the absolute silence of the subterranean bunker, I heard a sound that made my soul leave my body. Drip, drip, drip. It was the distinct, heavy sound of water pooling onto the linoleum floor directly behind my chair. A foul, pungent stench of stagnant river water and rotting vegetation instantly filled the small room, clogging my throat and making me gag. Using every ounce of survival instinct I'd left, I didn't turn around to look. I knew that if I looked at whatever was behind me, I wouldn't survive the night. I dropped the radio receiver, lunged out of my chair, and sprinted toward the heavy steel security door of the control room. As my fingers gripped the door handle, the central monitor behind me let out a deafening, metallic screech of audio feedback. Through the glass reflection of the dark door panel, I watched the camera feed above me. Emerging from the shadows directly behind my empty chair was the tall, emaciated entity, its elongated arms stretching out across the desk, its hollow eyes fixed on my retreating back. I threw the door open, sprinting up the concrete stairs into the main lobby of the Austin facility, screaming for the building's physical security team. When they returned to the control room with me 10 minutes later, the monitors were completely dark, the power to the console severed. The Westwood property in Denver was checked by local police and found completely empty, with no signs of entry. However, when the tech team pulled the local server backups of my station's feed the next morning, they found that the last 3 minutes of footage had been permanently overwritten with a static loop. Within the static, a single message was encoded in the audio track, repeating my name over and over in a wet, mechanical whisper. I resigned from a security firm that very morning, refusing to ever work an overnight shift again. I work in bright, crowded retail environments now, and whenever I see a security camera dome mounted on a ceiling, my throat locks up with a paralyzing dread, because I know that some feeds don't care about physical distance. The watcher is always being watched. The digital compass on your trending terrain mapping app violently spinning in circles in the middle of a deserted state park at dusk is a creepy glitch. But your chest completely locks up when the app displays a blinking red dot moving at 60 miles per hour directly toward your current position, even though the flat horizon around you is completely empty. My name is Jackson Montgomery, and in the early winter of 2024, I became obsessed with a new, trending augmented reality geocaching app that was viral on social media. The app used randomized spatial algorithms to generate precise geographic coordinates in remote areas, challenging users to visit the locations and log what they found. It was highly popular among urban explorers and hikers looking for unique, off-the-beaten-path destinations. It was a gray, overcast Saturday afternoon when the app generated a set of coordinates located deep within the interior of Blackwood State Park, a rugged, densely forested expanse of wilderness in central Pennsylvania. The location was 4 miles away from the main hiking trails, situated in a low-lying valley that local hunters avoided due to the confusing terrain and the complete lack of wildlife activity. Intrigued by the challenge, I packed a small day pack, checked my phone's battery, and set off into the woods around 3 p.m. The hike was arduous, the ground thick with slick mud and decaying leaves that muffled the sound of my boots. As I descended deeper into the valley, the natural sounds of the forest began to fade away entirely. There were no birds singing, no squirrels rustling in the brush, and the wind had completely died, leaving the air heavy, still, and unnaturally cold. By the time I reached the exact destination, it was well past 5 p.m., and the winter dusk was rapidly painting the forest in deep shades of blue and gray. The coordinates led me to a small, circular clearing surrounded by ancient, twisted oak trees that looked completely dead. In the center of the clearing sat an old, circular stone well, its opening covered by a heavy, rusted iron grate that was secured to the stones by thick, padlock chains. I pulled out my phone to log the find and take a photo for the app's community page. But the moment I opened the interface, the digital compass on the screen began to spin violently in circles, the interface glitching with lines of corrupted code. The screen flickered black twice before loading a completely new, unlisted tracking grid that wasn't part of the standard app software. In the center of the screen, a small blue that represented my current location. But exactly 1 mile away, at the edge of the map grid, a large, flashing red dot appeared. Beside the dot, a digital speedometer display read 60 miles per hour, target locked. My brow furrowed in confusion. I assumed the app server was experiencing a severe tracking error or displaying another user's device incorrectly. But as I watched the screen, the blinking red that didn't move along any trail or road. It was moving in a perfectly straight line through the dense, impassable forest terrain, heading directly toward my exact coordinates. The speedometer climbed to 80, then 90 miles per hour. A sudden, sharp drop in temperature hit the clearing. The air became so cold my skin began to sting, and my breath formed a thick, white plume in the air. Shaking with a sudden surge of nervous paranoia, I looked up from the screen, scanning the perimeter of the clearing. The forest was completely still. There were no lights, no sound of engines, and the horizon was entirely vacant of movement. Physical reality dictated that nothing could move through that dense brush at such a speed without creating a massive wave of noise. I looked back down at the phone screen. The red dot was now less than 200 yards away, its tracking indicator flashing with a violent, bloody intensity. The app's audio speakers burst to life at maximum volume, emitting a low, rhythmic thumping sound that perfectly replicated a human heartbeat, accelerating faster with every passing second. Then, a text notification type flashed across the digital map. IT is in the light. Run. Primal survival instinct exploded through my paralysis. I turned around and bolted out of the clearing, running blindly back up the steep slope of the valley toward the main trail. I didn't look back. I kept my eyes locked on the dark spaces between the trees ahead, my breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. Behind me, the silence of the forest was shattered by a sound that made my soul leave my body. Crack, crack, crack. It wasn't the sound of branches breaking under feet. It was a series of loud, explosive acoustic booms that echoed through the trees, moving up the valley slope with a terrifying, impossible velocity. The force of the movement was so intense, it caused the ground beneath my boots to vibrate violently. I pulled out my phone as I ran, trying to use the flashlight, but the screen typed a new message into the app interface on its own. Estimated time until arrival, 10 seconds. I threw myself behind the massive trunk of an ancient pine tree, pressing my back against the rough bark, covering my mouth with my hands to muffle the sound of my panicked breathing. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for the nightmare to end. The temperature around the tree dropped to absolute zero. The moisture in the air instantly froze, coating the pine needles above me in a layer of white frost. Through the absolute dark of the woods, a shape glitched into existence directly in front of me. It didn't emerge from the brush. It manifested out of the shadows like a skipping frame in a corrupted video file. It was an impossibly tall, skeletal silhouette of a shadow figure. Its architecture composed of a shifting, gaseous blackness that seemed to absorb the minimal winter moonlight. It didn't possess eyes or a mouth, but within its dark face, a wide, horizontal slit opened up, revealing a row of sharp, translucent white teeth that mimicked a human grin. It let out a low, vibrating screech that sounded like a chorus of tearing metal and distorted radio static. The acoustic force was so intense, it shattered the screen of my smartphone in my hand, raining glass shards onto the frozen mud. I didn't stay to die. I lunged to the left, tumbling down a steep gravel ravine, my body battering against rocks and roots until I hit the shallow stream at the bottom. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the agonizing pain in my shoulder, and sprinted down the watercourse, knowing that flowing water sometimes masked tracking signatures. I ran until the trees finally cleared, bursting onto the main state highway at 8 p.m., where a passing truck driver found me shivering and incoherent. When park rangers inspected the valley coordinates the next week, they found no signs of an intruder or animal activity. However, the heavy iron grate over the old stone well had been completely torn off its chains from the inside. The rusted metal warped outward as if blasted by a massive force. I permanently deleted the exploration app that very night, refusing to ever use a location tracking service again. I live in a heavily mapped city center now, and whenever my phone's GPS navigation system glitches or recalculates a route unexpectedly, my chest locks up with an absolute dread, because I know that somewhere in the unmapped spaces, the dead coordinates are always tracking you back.